Crunch is never good? Yeah. Well, there's the thing with that. If crunch didn't happen, most of the video games that you like today would have never been made. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying that... Oh, that's only 2 frames now, isn't it? 1, 2... Yeah, okay. 1 or 3 frames. I'm not saying you should do crunch. But what I'm saying is, traditionally, if there had been no crunch, a lot of the games that you enjoy today would have never existed. And that's because people who invest in games don't want to pay for the development of games of their full cost. The full human and resource cost of a video game is much more than a publisher would be willing to pay. Because it would be like 3 or 4 times the price that it is currently. If you worked only 8 hours a day and you got paid for only 8 hours a day and you tried to make the same game, it would take like twice as long to make. So it's like, oh, games take super big games take like 4 or 5 years to make. Okay, well, you'll have to be waiting, 8 to 9 years for that same game now. And publishers don't want that because they know that it will not be a quick return on their money. So they won't pay for that kind of thing. Or they won't pay the double the cost to get it done in the same amount of time with double the people or whatever. It doesn't scale exactly, twice as long versus, we can cut the time in half if we had double the people. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you have to really add a lot of people to get a quicker schedule out of it. But just to talk about it in basic terms, that's what would be required, and the publishers don't want to pay out of pocket for that. They want it as cheap as possible, and they want to sell it for as much as possible, because their idea is, I'm investing in this to make money. And if it's potentially not going to make money, or it's going to cost more money than it might make, then they're not going to make that. So that's the sort of double-edged thing. Like I said, I'm not saying that you should do crunch. I'm just saying that the reality is, if you want to advocate that developers no longer do crunch, then you're going to have to be willing to make other sacrifices. Either the game's going to be looking last gen, or the game's going to take twice as long to make, or something. There's nothing's free, so to speak. You got to pay somewhere along the line. And I think it's important that people realize that, because obviously you want to have workers' rights, especially in these kind of fields where you get the horror stories of, I worked 7 days a week for 3 months straight doing like 16-hour days, and now I've destroyed my ability to work. Like, that's, that's not good. Those kind of conditions are very bad. And not everybody's built to handle that kind of thing. But you've got to realize, too, that as long as people continue to demand the same level of quality at the same price, things aren't going to change. Because someone's going to pay there. And it's sure as hell not going to be the publishers, because they're not going to open their wallets. They don't care. So it's kind of like a deadlock thing. It's really a tough issue to crack open, right? I think this is a good balance. Let me turn boxes off and see how it feels. Yeah, see that? It really looks like it should be hitting them right at that range too. But when you're far enough, it whizzes over his head. It has a lot to do with the previous frame in there. Has a lot to do with the previous frame. Because when you see the foot's like right in front of his face, and be like, why wouldn't it hit him? You know, you want that to hit him when you're that close. I think that's the right call, having the lower hitbox, and then just at range, it'll whiff. Yeah, I think that works. Yeah, that's the thing. Like most of the time, I just play indie games. Which, who knows if they're actually made with crunch or not, you know, that's up to the individual project, but in terms of, like, graphics quality and all that, I really don't care. Go ahead, make everything look last gen. I mean, we've kind of peaked on graphics anyway. There's always going to be some envelope that someone's going to want to push, but okay. And the effects of this are only temporary, too, because once the technology and the efficiency of tools catches up to bridge that gap, then you'll have that cost factor be covered. Yeah, exactly. It's mostly about art style and art direction now. Absolutely. So now would be the time to implement that kind of anti-crunch stuff. You know, unionize or whatever. I know they don't like to talk about it openly because you can get in a lot of trouble. You know, people can get fired if they talk about unionizing, but nobody owns me, so I'm gonna screech from the rooftops. Do it! Do it! Just do it! God, stop talking about it and just do it. Get the people together. I mean, there's enough horror stories out there. Just do it. I don't know. That's my opinion on it. It's like a lot of things. It's like, oh, well, we're gonna take a dip in quality, and it's like, yes, but it's only temporary. If you look at the quality, the graphic quality that indie games have now, let's say like 3D indie games, that the quality that they have now, they would have never been able to afford 10 years ago, and they would have never been able to afford at all 20 years ago. So you say, oh yeah, the quality of the games are gonna drop. That's true, but the quality to price ratio lowers over time anyway. So within a console's generation of time, you're probably back to where you were anyway. And you also don't have crunch. You know what I mean? The workflows get faster. I mean, sure, there's diminishing returns in some respect, but it's gonna kind of even out along the way. It's the same thing, like back 10 years ago, well, maybe not 10 years ago, well, that was 2010, let's say 2006, 20 years ago. Look at what cell phones looked like back then. They're basically just calculators with a cell phone attached. They couldn't do any, they didn't even have color screens. And look how much they cost. They cost a fortune back then. But now you can get, I mean, sure, the iPhone 10s and 11s or whatever are way more expensive than anything was back then. But for today, you can spend that extra, like, you can buy a $50 smartphone now that's got a color screen, it can play apps, it can do all that stuff. And your old flip phone that may not even had a color screen back 20 years ago might have cost you the same thing, $50. So you see what I mean? The technology progresses anyway, and it's much cheaper to produce these things over time, and video games are no different. All the tools and the advancement and the computing power of the computers that they develop them on, they go sky high, and so all those costs get scaled back over time, and you'll just eventually even out. So you take a hit now to help the people that make the games, and you'll be right back where you were before you know it. That's how I see it. I would hit that button right away if it were me. But it's not up to me, it's up to the market, and it's up to the players that pay for the games, essentially. You know, and the publishers to actually enact that kind of thing. So even if, well, I was gonna say, even if you did do some kind of boycott, you know, the publishers probably have enough people that are fans that'll buy it anyway that it doesn't matter. you'd have to do a real gigantic boycott to even start to change minds. And I don't know what to do there. I really don't have an answer for that. I don't know how to get it started. I think what's probably going to happen is just at some point it's going to get so bad that the developers, the ones actually working on it, not the publishers, but the ones actually programming and doing the art, they're just going to unionize, and it's going to force the publishers to make a move. And that's it. I think that's what's really going to do it, but they're just afraid to do it because anybody that talks about it, well, the publisher wants to get rid of them. I can't have them talk about unionization. That's gonna impact that bottom line there. We don't want that. So let's get them out of there, you know? And that's very scary because, you know, some developers don't have mouths to feed. Some developers don't have children and don't have families. They're young, or they don't want to have kids, or whatever, and that's fine. They might be able to take that risk. But, you know, Johnny down in the art department, he's got 2 kids and a wife, and if he gets he loses his job, we got big problems. Now he's in a very bad position. So Johnny's not going to be too enthusiastic about talking about things that are going to get him fired. And that's where it kind of they get you. Yeah, I think so. It's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point. You know, as crunch gets pushed harder and harder, and you know more cuts happen. I think it's inevitable. You're just going to have it. It's just going to happen. It's just going to take a while to get there. That's all. I would love to see it now, but it ain't up to me, unfortunately. But I'll be happy when it does. They were actually talking a lot about it, like last year, or maybe a year and a half ago. It kind of got back into the discourse of whether or not we should do it, and this and that, and I thought maybe someone might finally do it, because it was kind of the hot topic issue at the time, but it just died down again, unfortunately. Alright, and if we make him stand up. There, that's a nice long range poke. Yeah, you're all the way over here. Boom, got him. Get back. Change in the work culture industry only happens in the worst case scenario. That's the thing. Yeah, you're gonna have to get more NetherRealm stories of like looking at like slaughtered cow carcasses for 8 hours a day has caused a dude to like break from reality. And other dudes just like you really need just some dude just flat out dies from working too much, and that's sad to say, but that will be the thing to help trigger something like this. Otherwise, I don't know. It's things don't usually change unless there's a reason to. Until something bad really happens, and you hate to see it that way. But that's unfortunately how most of this stuff works. You think COVID killed the momentum on Crunch Talk? That's possible. It's possible. And actually, like as bad as COVID is, how do I want to say this? It's not that I'm glad that COVID happened, but I think it actually helped some of these studios figure out that hold on a second. Trying to pick my words carefully. Not that it's a contentious thing, but just to be accurate. Alright, let me back up. A lot of management environments were very opposed to people working from home. Not only from a technological standpoint, because the people at the top of management may not understand all the technology that goes into it, but also from kind of a stigma attached to it that, oh, people that work from home, well, they're not really working. They're goofing off most of the day. They're not disciplined enough to do that. And when it became mandatory when the realization hit that, oh yeah, everybody's just going to have to work from home. We can't just close for 6 months or 8 months or however many, because at the time we didn't know. Once they were forced into that, then they noticed, like, hey, in some cases, productivity actually went up for people. They're more relaxed at home. You know, they can get up and fix their favorite food or whatever. They got their fridge at home. They can stock their favorite stuff. They can get their special coffee at home. You know, they can kind of like relax a bit. You know, they can open the windows. They're in a comfortable environment. That kind of stuff. And, well, as long as you don't have the person goofing off, that can... You can watch anime on the clock. No, we're talking about increased productivity, not decrease. But yeah, as long as the person's not screwing around, all those factors combined make them more productive. Because they're more... Well, yeah, security, that's what I mean about the technology thing part, where they don't understand the technology as much. Now there's ways that you can securely do that stuff. Most companies have secure remote communications between different buildings and stuff like that. And that's commonplace. And they can just apply that same security measure to when you work at home and so on. So they may provide you a laptop to do that. They say this is the laptop, this work laptop, and you don't do anything except work on it, and you don't load anything on it, and you just use it for that. And that keeps it kind of out of the... there's potential threats, like if you hook up to your home Wi-Fi, maybe a computer on the Wi-Fi has a virus on it, and it's going to try to infect that new computer that you just brought home and whatever. Now you can, as long as that unit is protected properly, then there's a very low risk of that. But if you use just your desktop at home, maybe it's already got a virus, and now you've connected it to the company servers, and it can get in there and do all these nefarious things. But if they hand you a laptop and they secure it down, then it's separated from everything else. You know what I mean? There's not a pre-existing threat there. And that topic can go real deep. So that's a whole other thing. But the point is that it's absolutely doable. There's no reason technologically not to do this anymore. So anyway, where I'm going with this is that now that we have the proof shoved in management's face that, yeah, this actually increases productivity instead of decreases productivity, the working conditions for these people have improved slightly. So there may be less talk about it now, because you get a little bit of an improvement and everybody kind of forgets about it. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm trying to think of a happy example here. I can't think of a happy example. Okay, well, let's put it this way. I'll use a personal example. I have a problem with overworking, and that usually ends up with me getting injured. But during the recovery of that injury, I'll feel better. One day I'll feel, wow, I feel like 50% better than I did yesterday. That's a huge improvement. And then I just go back to working all day. And then I make my injury worse by doing that. I think we're kind of in that lull of the pressure decreased a little bit. And then everybody's like, wow, this is so much better. I feel so much better. It's not that you've fixed the problem, but the people aren't feeling the pain as much. Because they've been feeling it for so long, you take a little bit of the pain away and it feels so relieving. And it gets your mind off of, you know, the let's unionize thing a little bit. Because now everything's a little bit better, you're a little more relaxed, you're feeling better, and your mind's not thinking about it all the time because it's not a constant, intense pain as it used to be. But sentiment will slowly grow back to that as that levels out. That's my guess as to why the discourse may have taken out. Yeah, exactly. Injury, heal, injury, -100. Heal 50, injury, -100. That's my life. And I'm learning to deal with that, and I'm learning to step away preemptively to avoid that, and it's been working. And I've been much better at it, and I feel much better than I have in the past year. So I'm learning that lesson. I'm being a little better with myself, but I think we're kind of in that lull. If I had to guess as to why the discourse kind of went away from that, something must be distracting people from that, and usually it's like, oh, we turned the pressure off a little bit. We turned the pressure down. And so you're not as agitated as you used to be, and that kind of stuff. That would be my guess. But over time, the pressure is going to build back up, and it has to, because people are going to be continually hurt by this until something changes. You know, you've got people that leave the industry because of like just permanent burnout. Like they get driven so hard that they just can't perform that function anymore. Either it mentally or physically breaks them, and they can't do it anymore. And you don't think about physical strain. You're like, oh, they're sitting at a desk. Oh, they're just drawing all day. What could that possibly do? But you draw enough with your arm. An artist can tell you. You draw enough for long periods of time. You're sitting down a lot. The body's not meant to stay in that position. It's not meant to strain the arm that long. It's not meant to do this stuff. And over that time, it actually turns into injuries. You can start to get chronic pain. You know, you can get stiffness. You can get some loss of motor function in severe cases. And it's not good. If you sit down all day, I'm bad with this, and I'm trying to get myself away from sitting so much all day. You can actually form blood clots from sitting too long. Yeah, calluses, and the drawing calluses. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. You say, gee, the lazy artists, they don't do nothing but sit there and doodle on the thing all day. But yeah, you can get injured from those kinds of things. But there's those stigma around it too, where it's like, if someone who's not in the game industry is thinking like, video game developers, how could they get injured? Like, really? You know, and that's the attitude. And that sort of delegitimizes, you know, when we try to do stuff. Well, now, I mean, I guess I can't put me in that. So when I say we, I say the industry at large. When we try to bring up issues of like injury and overworking and all this other stuff, they'll be like, you've got a cushy job. You just sit there all day. What are you complaining about? You know, that's the typical response that you would hear. Like, I used to hear all the time. Yeah, carpal tunnel, that's another one. I started to get that. I've been wearing the wrist braces, and that's been doing good. I wear those at night, and I do stretches on my wrist, and that stuff's pretty much gone away. But I have to keep using the braces at night, so it's helping quite a lot. But yeah, that aside, I don't know how many times I've heard from family members and other people when I was working on Hamster Drop and Ecto Rush, and they're like, well, you need to get a real job. And I'm like, do you realize how much I actually work on this? Like, would you like to sit with me for an 18-hour work session and then do it again the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day? Do you want to sit through my lunch break that's actually me eating food while still typing? Do you want to come and experience that? Because I'm pretty sure you'd be quite surprised at what it actually takes to do this kind of stuff. It's just an insane amount of work. You just need a lot of time to get through it. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. How are those weekends that you enjoy that I don't have anymore? But I think on some level that's kind of the wrong take too, because then you're just kind of comparing misery at that point, and I don't find that to be very productive. But you know, that's where my mind goes to first instinctually. It's like, would you like to sit in with an 18-hour work session with me? And we'll do that 7 days a week for the next 6 months. You want to do that? How about we'll do that? But I think it's fundamentally just not an understanding of that. They just say, oh, well, I see him sitting in the computer chair. I mean, what's he actually? I think he's typing, but you know, what's he really doing? You know, I mean, this is a video game. You just make the dude walk, right? I mean, it can't be that hard. That's the attitude, you know. That's kind of what you get with that, and it's just fundamentally a misunderstanding. They don't understand what it takes to make a game, so it's just how it goes, right? Everyone should just acknowledge that all work is still work and can still be very difficult. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, just pressing buttons all day. Yeah, pretty much, right? And artists get the same bad rap in general. I mean, the artists they've been fighting this for, what, millennia? We still don't think art is a real job. We still don't. And how long has it been since artists have been around? We got cave paintings, right? Come on. Hell, they were probably more respected in the cave days than they are now. Can you imagine?